In Canada, there's no such thing as an LLC. Instead, we have corporations. Corporations are similar to LLCs, but they also offer some very unique benefits that I'll tell you about later. In this video, I'll show you the exact steps you need to follow to set up your corporation in Toronto. I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, but you probably aren't either. And the good news is that most people don't need any lawyers or accountants to set up a corporation in Toronto. The process is super simple, and you can follow along in this step-by-step video and have your corporation set up in less than 15 minutes. Now you have three options. Option 1 is to do it yourself by directly sending all the required documents and forms to the government. Option 2 is to hire an accountant or a business lawyer to do it for you. And option 3, my personal favorite, is to use a professional online service. Doing it yourself requires going to the Government of Canada's website and reading through tons of confusing information. This is what the website looks like. As you can see, this is not a beginner-friendly process, and there's a very good chance you'll make mistakes that could end up causing you problems later on. Hiring a lawyer or accountant works, but it can easily cost you thousands of dollars in fees, which is money you could have used for your business. I recommend using a service like Incorporate Canada. There's a link in the description if you want to follow along. Once you click that link, it will take you to their homepage. There are two options here, depending on whether you're Canadian or a foreigner. Incorporate your business now and incorporation for foreigners. If you're a foreigner, there are actually two paths depending on your situation, and it's a bit more complicated. You can click Incorporation for Foreigners and follow the steps from there. I made a separate video to guide you through that process in detail. The link to that video is in the description, or you can also click that pop-up card at the top right corner of your screen. If you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, just click Incorporate Your Business Now. Fill out your contact information starting with your first and last name. Enter your phone number following the format shown in the example. Now just enter your email, and then enter your company website URL if you have one. If you don't have a website for your business, that's okay. It's not required to set up your corporation. Now for your corporation's name, you have two main options. The first option is a numbered name. This means the government simply assigns your corporation a number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Canada. A lot of businesses actually operate this way, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's the fastest and simplest option. And honestly, if branding isn't a priority for your business, just go with a numbered corporation and save yourself the hassle. The second option is choosing an actual name for your corporation. If you choose this option, you'll need something called a nuanced name search report. This basically checks that your proposed name is different from all other existing businesses in Canada. Now, the good news is that Incorporate Canada will actually do this search for you free of charge as part of their service. There's just a small $13.80 federal government fee that they will charge you on behalf of the government. If you are okay with just a numbered corporation, select the first option. If you want your corporation to have an actual name, you've got 4 options to choose from. For this video, I'll select the numbered corporation option. If you want me to make a separate video showing you how to fill out the application for a named corporation, drop a comment and let me know. Now for this next part, you need to choose one of these legal elements. They all mean the same thing, so which one you choose is simply a matter of personal preference. I think incorporated sounds the most professional, so that's what I would choose. Now just describe what you plan on doing with this corporation in a couple of sentences. I run a media company, so I would write something like this. You can also use ChatGPT to write this part for you if you want. Now since you're interested in registering your corporation in Toronto, choose Ontario for the province. For this next part, you need to describe the kind of shares your corporation will issue. This sounds complicated, but don't worry, it's simpler than it sounds. A share is basically a unit of ownership in your corporation. And every incorporated business in Canada must issue at least one class of shares. Think of it like slicing up ownership of your business into pieces. You have 3 options here. The first option is one class of shares. This simply means your corporation is authorized to issue an unlimited number of common shares. If you're a solo founder or you just want to keep things simple, this is the option for you. Select this and move on. The second option is 2 classes of shares, Class A and Class B. This is a more advanced structure that gives you more flexibility, especially if you plan to bring on investors or split ownership in a specific way down the road. Class A shareholders get voting rights and receive the remaining property of the corporation if it's ever dissolved. Class B shareholders get priority on dividends and on repayment if the corporation winds up, but they don't get voting rights. This option is worth considering if you're building something bigger from the start. The third option is to insert your own custom description. If you need a very specific structure, you should probably consult a lawyer or accountant who specializes in this kind of thing. But for most people, option 1 is all you will ever need. For restrictions on share transfers, this section is about controlling who can buy or receive shares in your corporation. In other words, it limits a shareholder's ability to just sell or transfer their shares to whoever they want without any approval. This is not mandatory, so you have 3 options here. The first option is none. This means there are no restrictions at all. Anyone can transfer their shares freely without needing approval from anyone. If you're a solo founder and you're not worried about who might end up owning shares in your corporation down the road, this is the simplest choice. The second option is the predefined text requiring approval of share transfers. This means that no shareholder can transfer their shares without getting approval from either the directors or the other shareholders first. This is actually a smart option if you're going into business with a partner and you want to make sure neither of you can just sell your shares to a random third party without everyone agreeing to it first. The third option is to insert your own custom restrictions. Again, unless you have a lawyer guiding you on something very specific, I'd leave this one alone. If you have business partners or plan to bring them on in the future, the predefined approval option is worth considering just to protect everyone involved. But for most small business owners and solo founders, selecting none should be fine. Next, you need to set the minimum and maximum number of directors for your corporation. Every corporation must have at least 1 director, so the minimum can never be 0. Now they give you a tip here. Instead of putting the same number in both boxes, you can set a range. For example, a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 10. This gives you flexibility if you ever decide to add or remove directors down the road. So just set a range from the start and save yourself that headache later. If you do want a fixed number of directors, just enter the same number in both boxes. So if you're going to be the only person involved in this corporation, just enter 1 in both boxes. For restrictions on business, you have 2 options. Select none or insert your own text. If you don't have any specific restrictions in mind, you can just select none. Most corporations do this, and it keeps your options open as your business grows and evolves. Now for other provisions. This is where you can add any additional clauses to your corporation's articles beyond what's already been covered. Think of it as an optional add-on section. Again, you have 2 options here, none or select from a predefined list. For most people, none is perfectly fine. Unless you have a very specific reason to add extra clauses, there's no need to overcomplicate this. Just select none and move on. If you do want to add provisions, the form gives you predefined options to choose from, which makes it straightforward. But I'd only recommend going down that road if you know exactly what you need and why. Once again, you can speak to a professional for advice on this part if you're unsure. Next, you need to add your incorporators. An incorporator is simply the person or people who are creating the corporation. That's you. To qualify as an incorporator, you need to be at least 18 years old, not bankrupt, and not incapable of managing your own affairs. As someone watching a YouTube video about setting up a corporation, you probably meet all these requirements. Another incorporated company can also be listed as an incorporator if that applies to your situation. From the Type drop-down, select whether you are an individual or a body corporate. Then fill in your name and click Add. If you have more than 1 incorporator, you can add them here as well. And if you make a mistake, just hit Remove and start again. Now just enter your first, middle, and last name. For the effective date, this is simply the date you want your corporation to officially come into existence. You can choose today's date, which means your corporation becomes active the moment your application is approved. Or you can choose a future date if you want your corporation to start on a specific day, like the beginning of a new month or a new fiscal year. Just keep in mind that you cannot set an effective date that is before the date you submit your application. So today or any future date is fine, but nothing in the past. The date format here is year, month, day. So for example, May 14th, 2026 would be 2026-05-14. J. You can simply choose today's date for this. Click Next. Now you need to enter your registered office address. This is the official address of your corporation, where your corporate records will be kept and where any legal or government documents will be sent. And this is really important. Anything sent to this address is legally assumed to have been received by your corporation, so make sure it's somewhere you will actually get your mail. It must be a real Canadian address. No P.O. boxes. It can be your home address, a business address, or the address of a director, officer, or even a trusted friend or family member in Canada. Just be aware that this address will be published publicly in the government's corporation's online database. So if privacy is a concern for you, you may want to use a business address rather than your personal home address. Fill in your street address, city, and postal code. The province is already set to Ontario and the country to Canada, so you don't need to touch those. Then at the bottom, you'll see a question asking whether you want annual return reminders and other general government correspondence sent to a different address. For most people, the answer is no, so just leave it as is. But if you'd prefer those notices to go somewhere else, like a different email or mailing address, you can change that here. Now you need to add the members of your first board of directors. This is where you list the actual people who will be overseeing the management of your corporation. For each director, you need to provide either their residential address or an address for service. An address for service is simply an address where legal documents can be accepted on the director's behalf. Just like the registered office address, the names and addresses of your directors will be published publicly in the government's corporation's online database. So again, if privacy is a concern, keep that in mind. And remember the rule we talked about earlier. At least 25% of your directors must be Canadian residents. So if you're a foreigner and you're the only director, you don't meet that requirement. You'll need at least one Canadian resident on your board. To add a director, fill in their first name, middle name if applicable, and last name. Then select their country from the drop-down. Fill in their street address, city, and province or territory or state. Again, no P.O. boxes here. It must be a real physical address. If you have more than one director, you can add them one by one using the Add button. And if you need to remove someone, just hit Remove. Unless you have a specific reason to have multiple board of directors or to have someone else be the board of director, you can choose yourself to be the director of the company and enter your own information here. Now you'll see a field showing the percentage of resident Canadian directors you currently have. This needs to be at least 25% to proceed. If you're a Canadian resident and you're the only director, this will show 100% and you're good to go. If it's showing below 25%, you need to go back and add a Canadian resident director before moving forward. For the authorization section, just fill in your full name and your phone number, including the area code. Now you need to list individuals with significant control. This basically means you need to identify who actually owns and controls your corporation. An individual with significant control is someone who owns or controls 25% or more of the shares of the corporation, or someone who has control over the corporation without necessarily owning shares, or a combination of both. For most people watching this, if you're the sole founder and owner of your business, that's just you, so you'll add yourself here. Just fill in your first name, middle name if you have one, and your last name. Keep in mind that this information will be publicly available on Corporations Canada's website, just like your director information. The only exception is if you provide an address for service instead of your residential address, in which case your home address stays private. And one more thing to note. If there are other individuals with significant control in your corporation, you are legally required to notify them that their information will be provided to Corporations Canada and that some of it will be publicly available. So, if you have business partners or co-founders who meet that 25% threshold, make sure you give them a heads up before submitting. Now, there's an optional field here asking if you want a different address for service to be made public instead of your residential address. If you'd prefer to keep your home address private, this is where you can provide an alternative address, like a business address or office address that will be displayed publicly instead. Once again, no P.O. boxes. I keep saying this over and over again, but I don't mind repeating myself and annoying you if it saves you a mistake that could cost you a lot of time and money to fix. If you're fine with your residential address being public, just leave this blank. Next, you'll see two fields that are private and will not be made public. The first is your country of citizenship, and the second is the country where you are considered a tax resident. These are kept confidential by Corporations Canada and are only used for internal government purposes. So just fill these in honestly and don't worry about them being visible to anyone. Now you need to select the type of interest or control this individual has. You have three options. You own, control, or direct 25% or more of the shares. You have control over the corporation without owning any shares. Or you have a combination of both shares and control. For most solo founders, this is straightforward. Just select the first option since you own 25% or more of the shares. If you have additional people with significant control, you can add them at the bottom of this section. Next, you need to indicate whether this individual has significant control individually, jointly, or in concert with another person. Individually is straightforward. If you're the sole owner and you control your shares on your own, select this option. For most people watching this is the one you want. Jointly means 2 or more people own shares together. So for example, if you and your spouse jointly own 30% of the business, you both get listed as individuals with significant control at 30% each. The shares aren't divided between you. They're fully claimed by each joint owner. In concert is a bit different. This is when 2 people own their shares separately, but have an agreement to vote the same way. So for example, if one person owns 12% and another owns 15%, and they've agreed to always vote together, their combined 27% means they both qualify as individuals with significant control, and both need to be listed. But it's probably a lot simpler for you. For most solo founders, just select individually and move on. Then you need to indicate the percentage range of shares this individual holds. You have 4 options: more than 75%, more than 50%, and up to 75%, at least 25%, and up to 50%, or less than 25%. Again, if you're the only owner, select more than 75% since you own 100% of the corporation. If you have additional individuals with significant control to add, you can do that at the bottom. Otherwise, you are completely done with step 3 and you're ready for the final step. Check the box and click Next. Now there are 2 final things before you submit. The first is your CRA Business Number. Every corporation in Canada is required to have a CRA Income Tax Business Number. This is basically your corporation's tax ID with the Canada Revenue Agency, and you need it to file your corporate taxes every year. Incorporate Canada can get this for you for an additional $98, and I'd strongly recommend just letting them handle it. It saves you the hassle of dealing with the CRA yourself, and makes sure everything is properly linked from day one. Just leave the drop-down set to Yes and move on. The second thing is your reminder notices. Once your corporation is incorporated, you are required to file an annual return every single year to keep your corporation in good standing. The government will automatically send you reminder notices about this. By default, these reminders get sent by mail to your registered office address. But honestly, email is way more convenient. So right here, you can add your email address, and the government will send your annual return reminders directly to your inbox instead. Make sure you add the email address of whoever is going to be responsible for filing the annual returns. For most of you, that's just going to be yourself. Just type in your email. Next, you need to provide the email address of the director who will become the online full access manager with the government. This is the person who will have full online access to manage the corporation's profile with Corporations Canada. In most cases, that's just you. So enter your email address here, and by doing so, you're consenting to Incorporate Canada forwarding that email directly to the government. Now this last part is really important if you're based in Toronto or anywhere in Ontario. Once you are federally incorporated, you are legally required to also register your corporation in every province where you carry on business. So if you're operating in Ontario, which you are, you need to register there too. The good news is that the Ontario government has set up an online partnership with the federal government that allows you to do both your federal incorporation and your Ontario provincial registration at the exact same time. So you don't have to go through a separate process for this. Incorporate Canada can handle this Ontario registration for you for an additional $99. And honestly, for the time it saves you, it's worth it. Just select Yes from the drop-down, and they'll take care of it alongside your federal incorporation. Now, this part is simply saying that the Ontario government does not accept future start dates for provincial registration. So, if you plan to start your business on a date that is after your incorporation date, you'll need to register with Ontario separately within 60 days of that start date. If you're starting right away, don't worry about this and just keep going. Check the first box. This gives permission for your information to be shared with the Ontario government so they can complete your provincial registration at the same time. If you select the second option, you're opting out and you'll have to register with Ontario yourself separately. There's no reason to do that. Just select Consent. And we're almost done. Now you need to enter the date your business activity will begin in Ontario. In most cases, this is going to be the same as your incorporation date, so just use that same date here in the year, month, day format. So, for example, May 14, 2026 would be 2026-05-14. If your business start date is going to be later than your incorporation date, go back up and select the Do Not Consent option and register with Ontario directly within 60 days of when you actually start operating. Then you need to briefly describe the type of business activity you'll be carrying on in Ontario. I already gave an example of this earlier. Just keep it simple and straightforward. For example, you could write something like online retail, consulting services, digital marketing, or whatever best describes what your business actually does. After that, fill in your registered or head office address in Ontario. This is the same address you used earlier in the form. The attention field is optional. This is only needed if your mail is going to a shared business address and you want to make sure documents get directed to a specific person. If you're using your own home address, or you're the only person at that address, just leave it blank. For the address of your principal office, in most cases, this is going to be the same as your registered head office address, so just leave the drop-down as is and move on. Next, select your preferred language to receive correspondence from the provincial government. English is already selected by default, so unless you prefer French, just leave it as is. Then you'll see a question asking if you have a chief officer or manager in Ontario. For most small business owners and solo founders, the answer here is no. So just leave it set to no. And finally, the last thing you need to fill in is the person authorizing the filing. This is simply the person who is officially submitting this application on behalf of the corporation. That's you. Fill in your first name, middle name if applicable, and your last name. Then select your title from the drop-down. If you're the owner and director of the corporation, select Director. Click Next. Check the box to confirm that the information you entered is accurate. Select one of the boxes for how you found out about Incorporate Canada. Since you're watching this video, you can select Other and type YouTube. Now, based on all the options you selected, you'll see the final price. I found this to be a lot cheaper than hiring a lawyer or accountant to do the setup for you. But if your situation is complicated and you need a very specific corporate structure, you're probably better off working with a professional directly. If everything looks good, click Submit and it will take you to the payment page, and once you make the payment, you're all done. Your corporation will be officially on its way to being registered in Toronto. Keep an eye on your inbox for any emails regarding your new corporation. Now at the start of the video, I mentioned some unique benefits of a corporation, so let me quickly go over that. As a corporation registered in Toronto, you'll be paying taxes based on Ontario's tax codes. In Ontario, corporations pay a much lower tax rate on their first $500,000 of profit. There are two rates: a lower rate of 3.2% for small businesses and a higher rate of 11.5% for everything above that threshold. Compare that to being a sole proprietor, where your business income gets added directly to your personal income and taxed at your personal rate, which can get very expensive very quickly as you earn more. As a corporation, you also have the flexibility to decide how much salary to pay yourself and how much to leave inside the corporation. So, by structuring your business as a corporation, you can save thousands of dollars every single year. Like LLCs, corporations also protect you by separating your personal assets from your business assets. This makes it much harder for someone to sue you personally for something your business does. If you're ready to register your corporation, you'll find the link to Incorporate Canada down below in the description. You can go back to the start of this video and follow along. I hope you found this helpful. It took a lot of time to put everything together. Drop any questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks for watching.